So let's talk about enterprise AI. It is triggering an absolute gold rush of spending. I mean, it's unlike anything we've ever seen before. But, beneath all that hype, there's this huge nagging question that leaders are asking, mostly behind closed doors. Is any of this actually working?
Okay, get this. Right now, enterprises are pumping an estimated $700 billion a year into AI. And that number, it's growing incredibly fast. The sheer scale is it's staggering. And it's all being driven by one really powerful emotion, fear. And this quote, it just perfectly captures the anxiety behind all that spending. We're talking about a giant unlock in budget. Why? Because leaders are absolutely convinced they're in a race against time. They feel like they have just 18 months to figure this whole thing out, or they're going to be left in the dust. It's a mad dash to adopt. But here's the crazy part, the paradox. In private, a full 70% of those exact same leaders will tell you they are sure they are wasting money. And you know why they feel that way? Because frankly, they have no system to measure any of it. It's like one executive put it, he said, "For every other metric, I have a report. On AI, all I have is a list of the stuff we bought." And that really gets to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? How do you move beyond just tracking invoices to actually understanding if these incredible, expensive tools are delivering real value? Did that massive spend actually yield a benefit? I mean, this is probably the biggest question in business today. So, to find an answer, it's actually really helpful to look back in time. The current AI boom has some incredible parallels to the early days of the internet, especially the rise of online advertising. It's a surprisingly similar story, a massive budget shift and a desperate need for new tools. Think about it. Back in the 90s, money was flooding from TV and radio right onto the internet. But a huge question popped up, the attribution problem. If a sale happened, who gets the credit? Was it the banner ad on Yahoo, the last click on a Google ad? Nobody knew for sure. Fast forward to today, we're seeing a similar budget shift, this time from labor to software. And we have the exact same problem. How do we attribute productivity gains to these new AI tools?
Well, the ad industry eventually solved its problem. They did it by building an entire stack of measurement infrastructure. You had companies like DoubleClick, Omniture, and Comscore creating the tools to plan, measure, and understand online ad spend. And that right there provides a really clear path forward for AI.
And here's the thing that's absolutely essential to understand. This infrastructure, it wasn't a barrier, it was an accelerator. Without it, giants like Google and Facebook would never have scaled their revenues so quickly. Measurement built trust, and that trust unlocked trillions in spending. The exact same thing is going to be true for AI. Okay, so let's be honest. Measuring the productivity of a knowledge worker has always been notoriously difficult. But AI introduces two massive new complications that make all the old methods completely, totally useless. The first one is something called Goodhart's Law. It's a simple but really powerful idea. When a measure becomes a target, it stops being a good measure. The moment you tell people what you're measuring, they start optimizing for that metric, and that often corrupts the result.
Here's a classic example. Let's say you tell an engineering team their productivity is going to be judged by how many lines of code they write. Well, you're not going to get better software. You're just going to get a whole lot of useless code. The measurement itself gets corrupted because it became the target.
All right, the second big complication is what's known as the principal-agent problem. The corporation, that's the principal, wants maximum output. But the employee, the agent, often has a very different goal, to work as little as possible for as much pay as possible. And AI can supercharge this conflict.
I mean, think about it like this. Imagine a lawyer uses an AI tool to do what used to be 8 hours of work in just 4. For the lawyer, that's a huge productivity win, right? They can now go play golf for 4 hours. But for the company, they see zero benefit. They're still just getting the same 8 hours of output. That whole productivity gain was captured entirely by the employee. So how on earth do you solve this? How do you actually measure AI's impact without falling into these traps? Well, it requires a totally new framework, one built from the ground up for this new era. A modern approach really just boils down to 3 key steps. First, you have to discover what's actually being used. Second, you need to engage your employees to drive safe and effective adoption. And third, you have to measure the connection between that usage and real business outcomes. So step 1 is discovery.
And this is crucial because you can't measure what you can't see. The reality is, most companies have absolutely no idea what AI tools their employees are actually using. In fact, over 80% of companies discover that their teams are using far more shadow AI tools than they've officially licensed. Okay, so once you have that visibility, the next step is engagement. You have to get people to use the right tools and to use them safely. And this is about more than just some training session. It's about creating an environment where employees feel safe to experiment without looking dumb and without the fear that one wrong click could get them fired. And that brings us to the final step, measurement. The process starts by passively observing who is actually using the tools. You separate your workforce into groups, heavy users, light users, and non-users. And this isn't based on a survey. This is based on actual behavioral data. Then, once you have those groups, you can start to correlate that usage data with your traditional productivity metrics. Are the heavy AI users in the legal department more responsive than the non-users? Are the marketers using these tools getting more campaigns out the door? This is where you finally connect the dots between all that AI spending and actual business value.
Now, whenever you talk about productivity this much, it inevitably leads to the fear of job loss. But the history of capitalism suggests a very different outcome. It's not really about doing the same with less. It's about competition.
This famous quote from Jeff Bezos just captures the dynamic perfectly. If one company uses AI to simply fire half its staff and pocket a bigger profit margin, a competitor is going to look at that fat margin as an opportunity. They'll keep their employees, use AI to do more, and go and take all the market share. See, ultimately, competition incentivizes growth, not just cost cutting. The companies that are going to win in this new era won't be the ones who fire people. They'll be the ones who empower their people with AI to innovate faster, serve customers better, and completely overtake their less ambitious rivals.
So look, we're in the middle of a massive technological shift. It's a perfect storm of huge budgets, huge anxiety, and huge potential. But the bottleneck, the thing that's really holding back this revolution, it isn't the technology itself. We have amazing models.
The key is better measurement. Just like in the early days of the internet, building the systems to actually understand value is what will ultimately unlock AI's true world-changing potential. So the real question you have to ask yourself is this: are you just tracking spending, or are you actually measuring what matters?